Is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the first Saturday show of the season, the NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by Bet365. I am your host, Josh Harris. New start time for Saturdays, 2 p.m. A lot nicer than 9 a.m. One for the hour. I don't have to set my stupid alarm to wait. Well, actually, I don't. I have a 3-month-old who wakes me up anyway, but 2 p.m. is much better for you guys. We got a lot of skate news today. We got a lot of goalie confirmed. So the information you guys are going to get today is going to be much more viable for tonight's slate. Joining me as always, Slim Cliffy. We had a 2-gamer last night. Did you play at all?
No, I took last night off to watch some horror movies. Friday the 13th. I wanted to go to the theater to go watch a horror movie, but Taylor Swift Eras Tour is apparently dominating the box office, so I stayed in to watch a couple horror movies instead. Hopefully you played Evgeny Malkin last night.
I did. I faded the Devils. I went with King Carroll. I full power play stacked the Penguins, and I had Cooley and Dursey, so I had a nice cash there. I was much better until Yari got the shutout. I was hoping for a greasy Washington goal, but I made money. That's all we can ask for in single entry. You're not going to win 64,000 and get stat corrected down to 18 every night. So
it'd be nice. It'd be nice if those were the bad nights, right?
I am still mad at the Colorado scorekeeper, but you know, what are you going to do? I'll pour some salt on my wounds. For some reason, there are 14 games today, 12 on the main slate. You know, they could have borrowed a couple games and made a nice, decent-sized slate yesterday. But here we are, the NHL, kind of NHL. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. But, you know, it's actually, you know, a good – I think the first 3 nights of the season, you're so amped up for hockey, and you're just like, yeah, let's go. That I think that the 2-gamer was actually nice, get a little breather. If you had a tough start, you can reanalyze your process and all that kind of stuff. So we're back here tonight. Decent-sized GPPs, considering there's college football and MMA tonight. The Saturdays last season were a bit wonky, so it's good to see them actually put out 20K to first. Usually on Saturday, we were lucky to get 10K, so we'll see. Hopefully everything fills. Nice mood lighting, Josh. It's like 70s porn. Just wait. but yeah, let's hop into the slate. But before we do, make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. If YouTube isn't for you, you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Make sure to give us a nice 5-star review there if you like our content. Just a reminder, tonight is the last night that if you click the link in the description below, you can get 10% off weekly and monthly NHL subs. If you're thinking about going premium, I would definitely take the 10% off weekly for a flyer. You get access to all of our tools. You get into the Discord. You can try it out for a week. If you like it, you can re-up. So I would definitely take advantage of that if you are on the fence. Lumberjack season. Yeah, it's cold and rainy. Sometimes you got to break out the flannels. First game of the night, Nashville at the 2.4 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.1 total. Looks like Boston going with Pastrnak, Zacha, and James Van Riemsdyk, Brad Marchand, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle. Third line remains the same. Looks like status quo for the Nashville Predators. You mentioned to me before the show that Brunette basically benched Novak Evangelista Tomasino for most of the third period. Tommy Novak played 9 minutes. Looks like the top line and the Cody Glass line got some pretty good minutes. Not that that matters too much in this matchup. I don't have a ton of interest in either side from a full stack standpoint. I think, Pasternak is always in play in any format just because he is one of the elite superstars of the NHL. His line mates leave a lot to be desired, but I think you can play Pasta or Boston 1. In your MME mix, I think maybe you can have a little Nashville 1, but I wouldn't go crazy on this game with 12 games on the slate.
Weird schedule for Nashville to start the year. Starting in Tampa Bay as a Western Conference team, they went to the East to start in Tampa Bay and then went home to play a Western Conference team in Seattle. Now back on the road to play an Eastern Conference team against Boston. That's kind of a tough start. Feels like a lot of travel for almost no reason, but I really do like that Nashville Tomasino, Evangelista, Novak line, but I think we kind of saw the problem with playing them in the last game. Like I only watched the first game. I didn't watch the second one. Novak looked pretty good in the first game. Evangelista kind of so-so, but they have veteran players that they're going to lean on when they have a lead late in the game, like they did, right, against Seattle. So if they're up, 2 or 3-1 against Boston with 10 or 15 minutes left in the game, that line's just not going to see much ice. They're going to try to do what they can to get Yakov training and Yusuf Parsonen and Ryan O'Reilly and those guys their ice time. So it's a little bit of a concern. I really didn't have a ton of interest in playing Nashville going into Boston anyway, like you mentioned. I don't think that Cody Glass line is very good with Nyquist and Smith. Part of benching that Nashville line at the end of the game is it mixes up the rest of the lines, right? So like Nyquist would get a turn on the top line, and then Cody Glass would get Yakov training and Philip Forsberg for a shift, and then it was just a disaster. So I don't really have a problem playing some one-off guys from Nashville. Like if you want a one-off Philip Forsberg, I think that's fine. Cody Glass getting power play time, that's fine, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't have a lot of interest in full stacking them. I think Boston's still going to be a pretty good defensive team, even without Bergeron. Not a super elite defensive team, but I was looking at their penalty kill numbers without Bergeron over the last few years, and they're still pretty good, right? So even if they're just average at 5-on-5, if they're still pretty good on the PK, it just makes for a really tough spot, especially on a slate this big. You're getting a little bit of leverage per the top stacks tool, but like with 24 teams playing, unless you're, you got 150 lineups or whatever, single entry, I don't think you have to go there. On the Boston side, I have a little bit of interest in the top line. We mentioned in the last show, Zacha and Krejci, pretty good offensive numbers. Or Zacha and Pasternak, sorry, even without David Krejci. James Van Riemsdyk's perfectly correlated with them at even strength and on the power play. The line's not that expensive. Top two stack percentage of 6%. Expected ownership under 4%. So that's a decent leverage spot. I'm not running out to play Boston because I always get a little bit scared of playing stacking against UC Saros. But they will be one of the top lines I'm considering. They're not just off the top of my head. They wouldn't be one of the top 3 lines that I'd be considering, but they will be in consideration. Other than that, like I don't have a lot of interest. Like DeBrusk and Marchand have actually played a decent sample over the last few years without Bergeron because Bergeron's just missed games, right? And they actually haven't been that good together. 2.8 expected goals for, which is, it's above average, but you'd want a lot more for a line with Brad Marchand on it. So I think I'm going to pass on that line, especially where they're probably going to go out against Ryan O'Reilly. O'Reilly, Forsberg, and Parsonen played pretty well defensively. Like Parsonen's a really good, two-way defensive winger. So it's not really a great matchup at 5-on-5. They're facing Saros. Still don't know exactly how good the team's going to be with those centers retiring in the offseason. So I'm kind of with you where I might pick some one-offs. Like I said, I do have a little bit of interest in Boston 1, but I think this is more of a one-off game or move along.
I agree there. Let's move on to the next one. The New York Rangers, the 3.7 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 2.7 total. Very high total for the Rangers, not much ownership, and they aren't very expensive. Going with the same lines, the Zibanejad line is 16,800. The Panarin line is 13,800. Then the Blue Jackets are they're mixing up their lines here. The top six looks like Johnny Gaudreau, Kirill Marchenko, Boone Jenner, Patrick Laine, Fantilli, and Texier. Well, we have to wait for confirmation. Some of their beats were saying that the lines could be jumbled. We'll see in warmups, but again, you look at the top stacks tool, not much like the heaviest owned line here is the Trocheck Wheeler line, which doesn't really make sense. I get the bump in ownership on Panarin, Hito, Lafreniere. They look great an opening night. Interesting to hear your thoughts about going back to the Zibanejad line here. They had a power play goal. Kreider had a shorthanded goal assisted by Mika, and they both assisted on the empty net. They didn't look particularly great 5-on-5, but this is an excellent matchup.
Yeah, I watched that game. The Panarin, Hito, Lafreniere line was the line that really stood out to me, especially Panarin and Lafreniere. Like, it honestly looked like, those two had been playing. I don't want to say like the Patrick Kane Panarin days, because Kane and Lafreniere definitely are not the same player, but they just looked to have that kind of chemistry. And, something I talked about in the offseason elsewhere was one of the players that I thought would benefit a lot from Laviolette was Lafreniere, because Lafreniere is a first overall pick, and I think there's a misconception sometimes about first overall picks that these players are just all skill or something like that. And that's really not the case with Lafreniere. He's a guy that lives within 20 feet of the net, right? Tips, deflections, rebounds, hard forechecking, and those are things Laviolette loves. And if you watch that game, like Lafreniere, like I thought it was a different player because he looked taller on the ice. First of all, I don't remember him being that tall. I say only 6'1". That's a pretty big guy. But he looked like 15, 20 pounds heavier, but he didn't look any slower. He looked as fast, if not faster, than he always had. And if Laviolette's going to accentuate his kind of forechecking tendencies and just kind of let him loose, you know what I mean? Like, let him go wreak some havoc in the offensive zone. I think that could work pretty well to Hito and Panarin's favor, right? Because those guys, they can forecheck, but they're not the forecheckers that Lafreniere is. And I think it's just a good mix with the right coach at the right time. So, yeah, I would say that line looked a lot better. I still do like Zibanejad, Kreider, and Kakko. Like, going back to last year, we mentioned on the last show, but 3.7 expected goals generated in their time together per 60 minutes. That's super high. They just couldn't finish. And any sort of finishing ability with that trio, and they're going to be not just a good offensive line, but one of the great two-way lines in the league. And, people might want to get in on the ground floor before, that becomes a more popular thing. But like you said, low ownership, only 2% expected over on DraftKings here tonight. So not a lot of people going to be playing that Rangers line on DK. FanDuel, about the same, lower top two stack, but still, I do kind of like that Rangers top line here tonight. You do get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. Columbus did not have a good penalty kill last year. I don't see any reason why it would be a whole lot better this year. Like, sure, their defensemen are healthy, but the guys they got really aren't great penalty killers. So I do like that Rangers top line, but it's kind of more of an ownership play because I do think the Rangers second line played way, way better in that first game. They're just coming in with a lot more ownership, relatively speaking. So it is Rangers one that I do like here. I think making a power play stack is perfectly fine. Like, if you don't want to play Kakko, take him off, put on Panarin, and away you go, or something like that. So, yeah, Rangers one for me. On the Columbus side, I don't really have interest in that second line. I kind of want to see how they'll do before I play them. I don't have a lot of faith in Columbus, if you could tell.
I'm not sure many people do. So
yeah, I want to see them do well before I start putting my money on them. You know what I mean? So would be Columbus 1 or nothing. Theoretically, you would get all 3 guys Gaudreau, Marchenko, and Jenner all skating on the top power play unit. There was one area Igor Shesterkin looked a little weak in last year. It was the penalty kill. So I guess it would be that direction. But I think for me, if I'm playing this game, it's like Rangers 1, Rangers power play, or nothing else.
Yeah, and I think Lafreniere with Panarin is the spot for him. He's a very similar player to Kreider, and like Mika is not the best play driver. So I'm glad that there's a coach who realized that, because Gerard Gallant is just, whatever he is, stubborn. So this is a good home for him. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.3 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.3 total. In practice yesterday, the Wings decided to put Lucas Raymond back on the top line, which killed all the interest I had in Detroit one night. It is now canceled. I am sad and depressed. That being said, they're going 11-7, so hopefully David Perron moves up at some point. Lightning going with a little bit of a different look as well. They're going Kucherov, Point, Sheary, Stamkos, Hagel, Cirelli. It's kind of interesting. I mean, like Stamkos, Hagel, Cirelli, under 17,000 the full stack. Kucherov, Point, Sheary, under 20,000. I think I might just power play stack there if I go to Tampa. I really wanted to play some Wings here because they have a decent total. They're not getting a ton of ownership, and it's still Jonas Johansson in that. But like Lucas Raymond just is a giant boat anchor for Dylan Larkin. Like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, just to kind of highlight your point, I looked at the Detroit top line sample when Tyler Bertuzzi used to be there. So it was Bertuzzi and Raymond. 2.7 goals for, expected goals for, 2.5 actual goals for in over 570 minutes together. Like, they just didn't create anything. And I think, Alex DeBrincat's a better player than Tyler Bertuzzi, better offensive player. But is he enough to really drag that line to like 3.5? Like that, I just don't see it. The silver lining is this: when I was looking at Raymond, his performance so far in his career, one of the comparable players that did come up was Mikko Rantanen. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but Mikko Rantanen really wasn't good the first couple of years that he broke into the NHL, and had a lot of similar like playmaking and shot rate and play driving numbers and whatever as Raymond does. So that would be the silver lining here, is that maybe Raymond can turn into him. Whether he'll turn into him like tonight, I kind of have my doubts. So, and it sucks because it's Jonas Johansson in net, and the Tampa top line is low key like bad defensively, and it doesn't matter who's there, whether it's Hagel, whether it's Stamkos. It doesn't, Sheary might help a little bit. But 3.1 expected goals, 4.0 actual goals against per 60 minutes last year when they had anybody but Brandon Hagel on the left side. That's just atrocious defensive numbers. Now, the reason that they can get away with it is because they're so good offensively, and it more than balances itself out. But that was kind of why I wanted to play Detroit 1. Like, I think Detroit 1's kind of still in play. Like, yeah, if you want to take off Raymond and put in Perron, make it a power play stack, I think that's perfectly fine. The problem is that they're coming in at about 5% ownership, and we'll get to a line much later in this show that's only $300 more expensive than them, that I'd way rather play than this line. So I think Detroit 1 is still fine to play. But like I said, I think there's a couple other lines, one especially we'll talk about, that's in that price range that I'd rather move to. The one we'll talk about a little bit later is basically has almost the exact same top 2 stack probability, and it's less than half the ownership. So that's just kind of why I'm not super high on Detroit. Like, I definitely do think they're still fine. And like I said, if you want to take off Raymond, put in Perron, make it a power play stack, especially where they're going 11-7. Like, the top forwards are going to have to play a lot of minutes here tonight. I think that's perfectly fine. But like I said, I just think there's another spot I would go to. But if I were playing, 150 lineups, I would certainly have 6, 7, 8% of that Detroit top line, and then just kind of move along. I think that's perfectly fine. On the Tampa side, like I said, top line really, really good offensively, almost regardless of who's there. But so is the second line. Hagel, Cirelli, and Stamkos had really good numbers together last year, almost 200 minutes together too, or Cirelli and Hagel at least. 3.2 expected goals for, 3.7 actual goals for. In their first game, Brandon Hagel was fourth in even strength ice time behind Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. So they like him. I think they moved him to the second line to try to give him another line with some scoring, honestly, because Cirelli and Stamkos typically have not been super good together. So I think you're fine to play Tampa 2 here. If you want to just play a Tampa power play stack, go ahead. I'm not worried about any matchups on the Detroit side, but Tampa 2 is going to avoid the Larkin matchup a lot. And once you get into that Detroit depth and you get to the Daniel Sprong, Andrew Kopp, Clean Costin, JT Compher, whatever. Actually, JT Compher.
What a contract.
Anyway, I just think it's a better matchup for Tampa 2. I understand wanting to make a power play stack or whatever, but I don't mind Tampa 2 here tonight. But if this is another game where I think maybe I'm picking some one-offs or whatever and then just moving along.
Yeah, if Perron was on that top line coming in at 4%, it'd be a much different story. But Lucas Raymond there, maybe he has a good night. It's possible. Anything's possible, but Perron being there would be much better. Let's move on to the next game of the night. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.9 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 3.5 total. Taylor Hall is week to week. So the top line is now Bedard, Ryan Donato, Taylor Radish. That line is under 15K on DraftKings. Top line for Montreal, Suzuki, Caulfield, Anderson, 13.8, and the highest projected ownership owned line that we have tonight at 14.5%. Kind of makes sense, but there are a plethora of lines in that 14,000 range. So if you are playing single entry and you do like Montreal, just know that you're probably playing the chalkiest line, and there are a lot of similar options with a similar top 2 stack probability for way less ownership on this slate. That being said, we talked about this game before the show. The range of outcomes on this game are vast. I don't think there's any result that would surprise me about this game outside of a 14-13 finish. You know what I mean?
I'd be less surprised by that, but than a 1-0 overtime win or something.
That is also true. Yes. So I do have interest in that Montreal top line. It's the ownership that's really I'm hung up on the ownership here. The Chicago top line coming in with a 3.4% top 2 percentage with 5.8% ownership. It's fine. It's a little under leveraged, but I feel like if you full stack that line, you're going to be unique. I think you're going to see a lot of one-off Bedards. You're going to see Bedard and Donato. I like Taylor Radish. He's cheap. I wish they were fully correlated on the power play, but beggars can't be choosers there. I don't really want to go to that second line. You can go Reichel, Anthony Ciu, but it's a cheap filler. They're coming with negative leverage. What are you thinking about this game? Because I feel like there's going to be fireworks, but there's a lot of negative leverage.
Yeah. I think the first thing that we should probably kind of mention about this game is the matchup. Montreal usually sends out the Nick Suzuki line in a shutdown role. They're not going to see Connor Bedard every single second, but they'll be matched up against him quite a bit. Suzuki and Caulfield, whether before Martin St. Louis or after, just have bad defensive numbers. There's no way around it. Like I was talking about on the show with Montreal's first game, St. Louis preaches kind of like a turnover, rush the puck, fly the zone type of attack, and that can lead you very vulnerable to a counter attack. You know what I mean? Things get worse when Josh Anderson's on that top line, because Josh Anderson, I think he had one of the worst defensive impacts of any forward in the NHL last year, and he's typically not been very good for his career. So it's dare I say it's a pretty good matchup for the Bedard line. And one thing I talked about in my picks article, head on over to stochastic.com. Picks article, free to read every day of the season, except for Sundays to start with. We'll see how things go. In the first 2 games with Connor Bedard on the ice, Chicago generated over 44 shots per 60 minutes. When he was off the ice, it was under 23. like almost half. So it's good. Like Connor Bedard's going to be pretty good at driving the play. It looks like nobody else on that team is. So I don't mind Chicago 1, honestly. If you want to take off Radish and put on one of the power play guys, put on Reichel, put on, even a cheaper Corey Perry or whatever, I think that's perfectly fine. Montreal's penalty kill was really bad last year. They didn't really add anybody in the offseason that's going to make it better, right? It's pretty much the same defense core. It's all the same forwards, except, some of them are healthy now. I don't imagine Montreal's penalty kill is going to be very good again this year. So, it could be one of those games where, Chicago's power play gets a couple goals because they're facing one of the worst penalty kills in hockey. So I don't mind a Chicago power play type stack. If you want to just do like Bedard and Jones, I think that's fine too. You know what I mean? Just use the two big guns. I'm kind of worried about what Bedard might look like without Taylor Hall because I know you like Taylor Radish, but going from Taylor Hall to Taylor Radish is a pretty big step down, at least playmaking wise.
Okay. Radish might actually be a better finisher than Hall.
Come on. We don't have time for this today. We do not have time for this today. So we'll see how things go. But at the very least, I do like, Bedard, Donato, Jones here tonight, something like that. On the flip side, kind of like the Rangers, I thought the Montreal second line looked a lot better than their first line in the first game. And that was the big takeaway was Juraj Slafkovsky looked like a good NHL winger, not a fish out of water like he did last year. The leaps and bounds that he's taken over the last 12 months look pretty significant. Kirby Dach pretty much picked up right where he left off. And as we mentioned on the first show, Martin St. Louis playing that fly the zone type style plays to Alex Newhook's strengths. He's a speed playmaker type guy. He scored 2 goals, which is kind of weird, but we'll take it. And where Montreal's ownership is coming in almost none, that second line under 1%. They don't have the high top 2 stack probability, but they're under 12K as a line. So if you want just 2-man like Dach Slafkovsky, Dach Newhook, something like that, I think that's fine. But I think it's also worth noting they played more than the Monahan line in the last game. That was what I was kind of worried about, is that Montreal 2 would be listed as the second line, but they'd actually get 11 or 12 minutes. That wasn't the case. This isn't the Novak line from Nashville, to put it another way. So I don't mind Montreal 2 here as a filler type stack. If you want to leave off, Slafkovsky and just go Dach Newhook or something like that, I think that's fine. But Chicago's depth sucks. There's just no way around it. There's just no one there that will be able to stop any competent offensive line. So I do like Montreal 2 here. Montreal 2, Chicago power play.
Yeah. This game, in MME, I'd have a lot of this game. Single entry, I got to kind of figure out what I'm doing. I haven't made my lineup yet. I like to do it after the show, but they are in consideration for me. As we mentioned off the top, we are sponsored by Bet365. If you deposit $10, bet 5 of it, you will get $150 in free bonus bets. To get this offer, you click the link in the description below. That is the best way to get it. The states that are available are Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. If you are in those states and don't have a Bet365 membership, you should take advantage of that. I put out a daily plus money prop of the night. I've gotten off to a pretty rough start, 1-3 in the first 4 nights, but we're going to get back on the horse tonight. And my bet tonight is Matt Coronado to record a power play point. So if you want to tail that on Bet365, sign up and you'll get free bonus bets for it, and you can put a free bet on it. So make sure to click that link in the description below. You have to be 21 plus, or if you're Kentucky, you have to be 18 and have at least 4 teeth. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get on to the next game here. Calgary Flames, they 3.4 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 3.3 total. Pittsburgh played last night. They beat the Capitals, who looked atrocious. Capitals are the second oldest team in the league to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are the oldest. Now, Yari had a shutout last night, so it's probably going to be Alex Nedeljkovic in net for the Penguins. Calgary mixing up their lines here. The top line is now Elias Lindholm, Johnny Huberdeau, and Andrew Mangiapane. Second line is Nazem Kadri, Dylan Dubé, and Adam Ruzicka. And the third line is now Mikael Backlund, Blake Coleman, and Matthew Coronado. Interesting stuff here. I don't like Pittsburgh, one, getting almost no ownership here tonight. They are back-to-back. If you do want to stack an old team back-to-back, tonight would be the night right at the beginning of the season. That being said, not the best matchup to do it. I like Calgary here. I like that Mangiapane is up on that top line. Dylan Dubé, although I like him, not very suited for DFS on the top line. Mangiapane makes a lot more sense there. I do really like Coronado on that Backlund-Coleman line. There are Calgary lines that I like. I think you can have some Pittsburgh and MME, but in 1 to 3, I'm probably going to take a pass on the size of the slate.
Yeah, I was kind of perplexed, let's say, by the totals when I looked at this, because Calgary 5-3 in their first game. I thought they looked pretty good, but Calgary did get relatively outplayed in that game. It was just it was a bad game by Connor Hellebuck. Those things happen. Calgary got 3 Calgary goals. One was on the power play, one was shorthanded, and one was empty net. So, you can't rely on those goals every single game. The new lineup is kind of interesting to me because Lindholm and Mangiapane had pretty good numbers together last year. 3.4 expected goals for, 4.6 actual goals, like one of the very few Calgary combinations that actually played well. Huberdeau and Mangiapane weren't bad together. The trio wasn't really that great, but they're going into Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh's not a super tough matchup. Like, one thing Pittsburgh's done in the first couple games is generate a lot of shots, a lot of offense, but they've also allowed quite a bit in return. I kind of like that Calgary top line here tonight. They're going to get, whether they get first or second line matchups, it doesn't really matter to me. And, they're coming in at 14,300 price, 3.8% top 2 stack. Like, we just talked about that Montreal line with all that insane ownership. These guys are less than they're only $500 more expensive, coming in at about a quarter of the ownership. You know what I mean? So, like, it's one of those lines that you talked about where there's enough in that price range where you don't have to go play the chalk Montreal. I do like Calgary one a little bit here. I don't like the second and third lines. I don't know why they switched. I mean, I do know why they switched them up, because, like I said, they didn't really play particularly well in that game. They just got to Connor Hellebuck, and those things happen. I don't have a lot of faith in the Calgary second and third lines as currently constructed. Kadri and Dubé do absolutely nothing for me. They were outscored in their minutes played together last year. The third line is fine, but if I'm playing a third line on the road on a 12-game slate, like, I may as well just go donate my money to charity instead. You know what I mean? So it's Calgary 1 or nothing for me. On the Pittsburgh side, I think it might be going back to Pitt 2. Like, they did look pretty good in that first game. I know that they're going to get a tough matchup, but there's no ownership on them. They're coming in under 1% owned. It's Pitt 2 for me because they're so low owned, but back-to-back, playing what I think should be a good defensive Calgary team. Calgary had a great penalty kill last year anyway. I think I'd play Pitt 2 if anything, but my favorite line in this game is the Calgary top line.
Yeah, for sure. Minnesota Wild with a 2.9 total heading into Toronto. The Maple Leafs have a 3.5 total. The Leafs. We love the Leafs on this show. Getting taken to overtime by Montreal. You'll love to see it. Surprisingly, not too much ownership here on the Leafs tonight. There was a ton the other night. Matthews, Marner, Bertuzzi, 20,900 on DraftKings, coming in at 6.3% projected ownership. The second line getting a little bit more ownership. They are only 17,000. I think, Toronto's fine here tonight. They're facing Gustafsson again, coming off a 41 save shutout. It's not the best matchup. My interest is in the road team here. Like, if you want to play the top line, Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Hartman, that's fine. But they're probably going to get that Matthews matchup. I'm interested in the Joe Eriksson, Boldy, Johansson line going again in the Tavares matchup, or even your boy, Marco Rossi, going up against bottom 6 matchups. But for me, my favorite line in this game is the Joe Eriksson line.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned them. Minnesota, like, I didn't watch that whole game. I only caught parts of it. Minnesota did not look very good against Florida. And the thing is, like with Jared Spurgeon out, that blue line sucks, man. Like I don't know what else to say. Like Brock Faber might be good. We'll kind of see how things go as his career progresses a little bit. But Alex Goligoski, he's like 38 now, which I'm 37, so like I know what feeling washed feels like. Jake Middleton's fine, but he's like a number 4-5 defenseman. Jonas Brodin is a defensive defenseman. Kalen Addison, still don't know if he's gonna last in the league. Is he the next Ty Smith? John Merrill is a press box guy. Like, I don't know who moves the puck from this blue line. I think that's going to be a big problem for Minnesota until Spurgeon gets back. The problem is like, as I wrote about a little bit in that Picks article, because I always love taking shots at the Leafs. Since they traded Pierre Engvall, their bottom six has just been terrible. Sorry, I was going to curse, but I'm going to try to keep my cursing to a minimum. Yeah, I know I can, but I'm trying to keep my cursing to a minimum on air.
Toronto bottom six is shit. All right,
yeah, it's trash. It didn't get any better in the offseason, and they got ran over in game one. I mean, ran over. When you get run over by the bottom six of the Montreal Canadiens at home, you guys have problems.
Well, they also played Klingberg 24 minutes.
Yeah, that's going to do it, I suppose.
That's a problem, too.
And the second line wasn't any better. Like you and I said, Max Domi is probably going to help the second line, the Tavares Nylander line, create some offense, but he's going to cost them defensively as well. And that's exactly what happened in that game. They created a lot offensively. They also allowed a lot defensively as well. Like, I'm not sure there's a good defensive line outside of the top line in Toronto anymore, not with these current lineup configurations. So, yeah, I don't want to use Minnesota one. They're fine. Like, as Caprarello and Zuccarello, Zuccarello, we're just flying here today. Kaprizov and Zuccarello are always in play, especially when they have the leverage they do tonight, right? Like, we have them under 2% ownership on DraftKings tonight. Like, that's really low. We just saw Montreal light them up for 5 goals, right? So, that can definitely happen. But I'm with you. I kind of like that Minnesota second line a little bit better. They said Marcus Johansson's going to play after he left that game against Florida a little bit early. They allowed quite a bit. They generated next to nothing. Allowed a little bit more defensively than I'd like to see them do. But I don't see anybody outside the top line in Toronto that can slow down Eriksson Ek and Boldy, not defensively. And they can only send out that top line one line at a time. So I'm with you. I think Minnesota 2 is my favorite line in this game, and they're coming in at 0.5% ownership. So you get 2 guys on the top power play unit. You get a line that was pretty good, when they played together last year. I think Eriksson Ek led them in ice time in that game. If not, he was just behind Zuccarello or Kaprizov. Sorry. So Minnesota 2 for me in this game. I think Toronto 1 is in play. They're always in play. 6.3% ownership. It's a really good leverage spot. Maybe Minnesota is not going to be very good defensively without Spurgeon, as they are not very good offensively. Like, he is just a really good defenseman. So if I'm playing like 20 lineups, 50, 150 or whatever, I'm definitely playing Toronto 1. I'm just not sure I'm going to get there in my single entry, but I think people should consider them just because there is such good leverage on them here tonight.
Oh, yeah. You should always have Toronto 1 in the portfolio. It's just, they're not my favorite on the night, but if I was playing 20, I'd definitely have a bunch of them. Let's move on to the next game. This game just gives me heartburn reading it. Buffalo Sabres with a 3 total. Heading into Long Island, that sucks. The New York Islanders have a 3.5 total. There's nothing worse than traveling to Long Island. Like, there's literally nothing worse. They've been doing construction on the LIE since Vietnam. Like, finished the highway. Anyway, Buffalo top line, most expensive of the night. Absolutely no ownership on them. I don't like stacking against Sorokin, just like I didn't like stacking against Igor, but like 0.3%, it's not going to take much to get over the field on that line. Now, the more difficult thing for me is, am I going to play Islanders is the first question. And if I am, which line am I going to choose? I kind of like the Horvat-Barzal combo. Simone Holmstrom doesn't really do too much for me, but they're 14-9 coming in at 2%. I'm glad Anders Lee is down on the third line. His knees are just shot. I think he needs to be in a sheltered role. I think you can go to the Brock Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall line. I'm a big Engvall guy, a bigger Engvall guy since he got traded away from the Leafs. I think both those lines are fine. Push comes to shove. I think it's the Horvat-Barzal combo. You get them on the top power play. You saw with the Sabres against the Rangers took advantage of their penalty kill. Buffalo isn't a great defensive team. I thought Levi looked good 5-on-5. It was just special teams he got taken advantage of a little bit.
Yeah, I did write up Bo Horvat in that picks article. Again, free to read over at stochastic.com if you want to just head over there and check it out. And shout out to whoever wrote the headline. Bo Horvat makes us true Bo Leavers. I'm a really big fan of that headline. But a couple things to take away from it. One, one of the big issues with Barzal is he is tremendous in transition. Like there are very few players that are as good in the neutral zone, getting the puck up the ice and into the offensive zone with his team having possession of the puck than Barzal. Like there just isn't. The problem is turning those possessions into scoring chances. Like there's a very big gap in Barzal's numbers when you look at his zone entries compared to creating scoring chances off those zone entries. And what's the point of entering the zone if you're not creating scoring chances is kind of the thing.
He's similar to Panarin in that aspect, though. It's like it's going to be a scoring chance or a turnover.
Yeah, but Panarin's been a lot better at turning them into scoring chances. Yeah. But I think a lot of it is who's he been playing with, right?
Yeah.
Like Anders Lee had that knee surgery like 3 years ago now or something like that. He hasn't been the same player since. So he had like maybe one good year of Anders Lee after Tavares left, and then that was it. And for the last 3 years, you're carrying around Josh Bailey. You're carrying around a one-legged Anders Lee, like maybe not a broken down, I should say, a declining Kyle Palmieri. Like Casey Cizikas was on the top line at times last year. Like that's how bad their forward depth has generally been. Like Bo Horvat is the best goal scorer. I shouldn't say that because Brock Nelson's a pretty good goal scorer, but they never played Nelson and Barzal together. They're their top two centers. So other than Nelson, Horvat would be the best goal scorer that team has seen since John Tavares. And the hope is that Barzal and Horvat can turn a lot of those zone entries into scoring chances. And it's funny to see like Simon Holmstrom, like I don't think a lot of him either, but him and Horvat had absurd offensive numbers together last year. 125 minutes together, 3.9 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 75 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Those are huge numbers. Problem is they didn't turn them into goals. Like that's generally been the issue with the Islanders for a long time now. If Barzal can take their chemistry and create more scoring chances out of those shots, this could be a really, really good top line, especially where, they might play 20, 21 minutes. They did last year after Horvat got traded there. So I kind of like this Islanders top line here tonight, which I can't believe I'm seeing that on a 12-game slate, but they're coming in at 2.4% ownership. The trio was under 15 grand. So I kind of like them, especially when you're going to get 2 out of 3 on the top power play unit. If you want to go down and play that second line, that's fine because Kyle Palmieri is on the top power play now. So you get 2 out of the 3 guys from that line on the top power play. And they're going to be going up against that Buffalo second line, which looked like a horror show defensively in that first game. I watched that whole game. They looked terrible. I'll be shocked if they actually go back to it, but it seems like they are because Victor Olofsson and JJ Peterka are just not good defensively. And Dylan Cousins he's not Patrice Bergeron. He can't carry a line defensively by himself yet. So as much as I like the Islanders top line, and I do like them, I think I'm kind of with you where the second line is just going to get such better matchups. And they were tremendous after Engvall got traded there last year. 3.5 expected goals for, only 2.4 against per 60 minutes. So I think it's Islanders 2. I agree that I like the most in this game, but I think either of the top 2 Islanders lines are my favorite lines in this game. I don't play teams go on the road against Sorokin. I just don't. So nothing from the Sabres.
Yeah, and I'm hoping when Oliver Wahlstrom is healthy, he can crack that top 6.
No. No, he won't.
Cliffy has seen some stuff in his days. Let's move on.
I've been following the New York Islanders for way too long. Like Casey Zizekas has a better shot at top 6 minutes than Oliver Wahlstrom does.
Well, I'll just, throw myself down a flight of stairs. Seattle Kraken with a 3.2 total. How they get to a 3 total? They're playing the Blues. Going into St. Louis, the Blues also have a 3.2 total. Okay. I was worried on the last slate that Kyrou wasn't going to get big minutes. He got the minutes. The Blues still looked awful. That being said, they're only 17,000. They're only getting 1.5% ownership. Seattle's generally a decent defensive team. Joey Decord's in that. Again, it's more of like a goalie thing than a great matchup thing, but at $17K, you got to consider him. And again, I want to play some Seattle here, but what line? The Tolvanen line is $12K flat. They have some negative leverage. It would probably be just that line, just because they're so cheap at $12K that if they only get 14 minutes, it's kind of baked into the price, so it'd probably be there. I guess you could go to the Beniers, McCann, Eberle line. There isn't a matchup on St. Louis where I'm going to go, oh man, they're going to shut them down. So I'm fine with the Beniers line, but I think just based off price alone, it would be the Yanni Gourde line.
I just don't have interest in Seattle.
Yeah.
Here's the problem: is that top line, that McCann line, so far in 2 games is being treated like a genuine second power play unit. So McCann, Beniers, and Eberle are playing secondary power play minutes now. If you look at the ice time, Beniers got 16 minutes in game 1 and 19 minutes in game 2, and that's something we talked about on the first show. Is that there are going to be nights where Beniers plays 19 and 20 minutes. There's going to be nights where he plays 15 to 16, and trying to figure out which is which. Good luck. The only guy you can rely on for ice time is Alex Wenberg. Figure that one out. And then you look at Seattle's second line, Burakovsky, Schwartz, Wenberg is not good. The third line's fine, coming in with a little bit negative leverage. For me, it's Seattle 1 or nothing. But again, they're at 15.7. They're kind of in that mid-tier price range where there are just other lines I would rather play. Go back to Vancouver. We'll talk about them in a second. The Rangers top line is only a few $100s more expensive. You got the Islanders top line is a little bit cheaper. There's just too many other lines in that price range that I'd way rather play than Seattle on the road, with the top line getting secondary power play minutes and the wingers getting second line minutes. That's the other thing, is Schwartz and Burakovsky are playing more than Eberle and McCann. So what are you going to do with that? I'm just out on Seattle. They can light up St. Louis. They can score 6 goals here tonight. No Seattle player has more than 20 DraftKings points. That's kind of the problem. So I'm out on the Kraken. Seattle or St. Louis is the top line for me, and I do have quite a bit of interest in that top line. Seattle doesn't take a lot of penalties, and that's a little bit of a problem. They don't allow a lot of shots either, but their goaltenders, like you mentioned, there's just nothing to worry about. We're going into year 3 of their goaltending just not being good. I don't know I don't know when they're going to fix it or if it's even fixable. But that St. Louis top line's perfectly correlated, coming in at 1.5%, so they have positive leverage. I mentioned in that picks article that Pavel Buchnevich is well over a point per game player over the last 2 years. That top line scored 3.5 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 whenever they're together. Whenever that St. Louis line is carrying positive leverage, I'm heavily considering them because they're the 3 best offensive players St. Louis has. They just also happen to be pretty good offensive players. And they're not that expensive. So St. Louis one I like most in this game, and it's not close. I don't think there's another line I'm considering for single entry.
Yeah. Buchnevich, one of the better two-way wingers in the NHL. Got traded for Sammy Blais, who's now back on the Blues. He would drink some cyanide. Anyway, if you didn't know, we have a Stochastic Hall of Fame. What do you do to get in there, you ask? Well, I have the answer. You have to have a Stochastic avatar. And to get that, you can go to stochastic.com/avatar, download it, and make it your Avi on DraftKings and FanDuel. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants. If you do that, tweet the win to @StochasticHOF on X. And if you don't have X, you can email support with your screenshot, and you win a free month of the Stochastic package of your choosing. We are going away from the Platinum package. It is sports specific, so whichever one you want, you can choose. And you can only win one free month a year, but if you're winning multiple, I think your bank account should be just fine.
Just want to jump in real quick. Seeing something about Columbus. They're doing a bunch of cap dancing, but it seems like all of Kent Johnson, Adam Bokvist, and David Jiricek are going to play tonight.
Well, that's good. The day they called up Jiricek, if they put him in the press box, that would have been an all-time bad move.
Yeah.
And Ken Johnson is my illegitimate son, so he should be in the lineup. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.9 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 4 total. This is a rematch of opening night. It was in Vancouver. Vancouver just laid the smackdown on Edmonton's candy ass. They started Jack Campbell for whatever reason. Stu Skinner didn't look too great in relief, but Stewie Skinner is starting tonight. I would imagine it's going to be McDavid, Kane, Brown again with Draisaitl, Hyman, Nugent, Hopkins. It can't be understated how bad McDavid and Kane are together. Our boy Saul Goodman, you either love him or you hate him. We happen to love him on this show. He DM'd us 275 minutes. Connor McDavid, Evander Kane, 1.95 goals for per 60, 4.12 goals against per 60 in a 275 minute sample. There is nothing to be worried about defensively coming back from the Oilers. Now, I see there's almost no ownership on Vancouver tonight, coming off a game where they obliterated this team. The Brock Besser, JT Miller line coming in at 1.1%, the Pettersson line coming in under 1%. Even if that triples, I think they're still in play. I don't see how you don't go back to targeting Edmonton until they can prove they can stop somebody, or they have line combinations that actually make some sense. So if you want to go back to Edmonton power play, I think that is perfectly fine. There's a lot of ownership there, but eventually they're going to break through. They're not going to have bad games every time. McDavid is almost a 2-point-a-game player. So I think going to Edmonton here makes a lot of sense, but Vancouver not getting any ownership after they put up an 8 spot against Edmonton, I think they still deserve your attention.
Yeah, I agree. And especially where they're saying Thatcher Demko's not playing tonight, right? So Casey DeSmith starting for Vancouver. That certainly helps out Edmonton's cause a lot. I did write up Zach Hyman in the picks article as well, assuming that he was going to go back to the top line with McDavid, given that, like, I know they want to try to make things work, but if you get absolutely just bashed, like your brains bashed in 8-1, how do you run the same lineup back the very next game? That's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping Hyman is back with McDavid because, as I mentioned in that article, Hyman's production per minute goes up 70% when he's playing with Connor McDavid as opposed to anywhere else in the Edmonton lineup. So I don't think that's a big surprise, but it should highlight just how much better off he is next to McDavid than he is next to Draisaitl. Like you mentioned how bad McDavid and Kane are together. If Connor Brown can't kind of be that glue to that line, which is what I brought, I mentioned in that last show, was how his playmaking skills might be able to help out McDavid a little bit. If he can't, I don't like Hyman, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins aren't going to be very good. Then you're just relying strictly on the power play. And if you're relying strictly on the power play, you're going to fail way more often than not. Like, it's the power play is supposed to supplement the fantasy value. It's not supposed to be the fantasy value. You know what I mean? So I'm having a tough time with Edmonton here because, like, I have no faith in Casey DeSmith for stopping anything. But I hate the Edmonton line combinations if they go back, but I haven't seen anything as far as line combinations, morning skates, whatever for Edmonton today or yesterday. So I don't know. Play the power play guys, right? Play McDavid, play Draisaitl, play Hyman, play Nugent Hopkins. That would be my approach. But I'm just gonna say there are just too many other options on the slate. You have Colorado going into San Jose. We talked about Toronto 1 a little bit earlier that I don't mind. Like, there are, if you want to pay up, there are other places you can go besides this Edmonton game. I don't have a problem playing the Edmonton power play here. I just wish that the even strength lines were a little bit better. I'm with you. I'm kind of almost on the Vancouver side a little bit more. going back to Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Garland, I think makes a lot of sense. But either of their top two lines are in play. Like Edmonton's going to get back Matthias Ekholm tonight. I think that's going to make a difference. The Edmonton power play did get better after he was traded. Funny enough, the Edmonton penalty kill. Sorry, the Edmonton penalty kill wasn't good with him on the ice, but they were good with him off the ice. So it was kind of like he helped push other people into his secondary roles, which helped them out a little bit more. So I think I like the Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Garland line here tonight. Like really, really good leverage. Pettersson, Kuzmenko, they look just as good, as they ever have. I'm still worried about regression for Kuzmenko, but if you want to just take off Garland, put on Besser or put on Miller, whatever, make it a power play stack, no issue there. It's the power play guys I think you should focus on either side here. I'm just hoping we get a little bit of an update on the Oilers here soon.
Yep. Let's move on to the next one here. Colorado with a 3.9 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.5 total. I don't know why clown music was playing, but
what was going on?
I failed there. Okay. I needed better circus music for going into San Jose. It's early in the season. We all can't win. The top line for Colorado is 21.5, and they're coming in with about 15% ownership, which is up there on the top of the night, but they still have positive leverage. The Sharks are just not good. Like, there's no redeeming qualities. The one thing I will say, when Vegas was in town, they only took one penalty. That's good, because if you put Colorado on the power play 4 or 5 times, you're going to be losing 4 or 5-0. So I love Colorado one here. I don't have too much interest in that second line. Like, Ryan Johansson just does nothing for me. If you want to leave off Duran and put on like Lehkonen or onto, I don't know. It just doesn't feel great. The one thing I will like, the Sharks are at least at home here, and like Barabanov, Bordelot, and Duclair under 10,000. They're going to avoid McKinnon. They'll get better match. There's just nothing on the Sharks that I go, yeah, I want to play them tonight.
Yeah, that's the thing is like Colorado kind of rebuilt its depth, right? So you're still going to go into Thomas Tatar and Ross Colton, which on the third line, which, that's not really a good matchup. I think a bigger thing for Colorado is all the defensemen are healthy. So basically any defense pair they put on the ice is going to be pretty good at that. Like, that's another issue. So I'm with you. I have no interest in the Sharks here tonight. I mean, shout out to Billy Eklund getting moved up to the top power play unit miraculously. Thank you. So, I don't mind, if you want to throw a wild Eklund out there or something like that, but I just don't have it. Like, Luke Cunnin led them in ice time last game. You know what I mean? Like, this is where the Sharks team's at. Like, Luke Cunnin wasn't good enough to stay in Nashville, a team that's rebuilding. And he led the Sharks in ice time, the forwards in ice time last game. So no interest in San Jose, a lot of interest in Colorado. I'm with you. Not as much interest in the second line. Like, I'm going to be honest. I think I would rather, if I'm going to not play Colorado 1, I think I'd rather play Colorado 3 and just save a ton of money and go stack an expensive stack elsewhere rather than just play like Lehkonen and Johansson and leaving McKinnon and Rantanen off my stack. Like, that's just kind of the way it is. In the San Jose's first game, the top line allowed almost 90 shot attempts against for 60 minutes. Like, that'd be a decent penalty kill, right? At 5-on-5, that's AHL quality. Colorado one's in a tremendous spot here. It's the Colorado power play guys all around, but it's the top line I like especially. Like, they're just too good. They're going to overmatch San Jose.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Manitoba Moose would overmatch San Jose right now. So
that's tough.
Maybe even the Anaheim Ducks with a 2.4 total heading into Las Vegas.
Look
the Vegas Golden Knights have a 4 total. That is a professional transition. That's why I got the big bucks. Jake, I want raise. Man, it's a 12-game slate, and I'm looking at the top stacks like, I kind of want to play some Ducks tonight, but this is just not a great matchup. Zegras, Terry, Henrique, 14-8, coming in right around their top 2 stack percentage. Vetrano, McTavish, Strome, pretty cheap as well. Like, this is another game where I think, I'd have a little bit of Anaheim if I was 150 maxing. That line is very good together. But the Ducks are going to be a pretty bad team again this year. I do really like Vegas one here tonight. Eichel's been playing big minutes. He's been shooting the puck. They're coming in at 7.5% ownership. They're under 20,000. The defensive struggles for the Ducks are well noted over the past few years. They should have drafted Fantilli. They took Uncle Leo or whatever his name is, the GM, admitting that he wasn't sure about their franchise is just in turmoil. I really like Vegas one here too.
Yeah, I do too. I even wrote them up in the picks article. Again, free to read over at Stokastic.com. When they got Ivan Barbashev, the goal scoring went up on that top line. It wasn't a lot, but it was like 7-8% in the regular season, and then went up even more in the playoffs. You get Marchessault and Eichel on the top power play unit. Obviously, his penalty kill was terrible last year. Vegas is coming in with positive leverage. 11% top two stack against 7.6% ownership. So it's another one of those spots. Like, if you don't want to play Edmonton top line or second line or whatever, like, play this line instead. I think the Anaheim's best chance of winning here tonight is John Gibson standing on his head, and that's why he's one of the goalies that I do like for tonight. But I'm with you. Like, I would have interest in, if this was a 6-game slate, I would probably be taking a harder look at the Anaheim top line, because they do have good offensive numbers. 3 expected goals, 3 actual goals generated per 60 minutes, likely all on the top power play unit as well. So I don't mind that Anaheim top line in a nutshell, but 12-game slate on the road against Vegas.
Pietrangelo is out, so
yeah. So there we go. So I don't know. For me, it's Vegas one. They've just played so well together since being put together. They'll get the ice time, power play time, all that. Vegas one's one of my favorite stacks on the slate.
Yeah, same. They kind of let me down a little bit against San Jose, but they coasted in that game.
See, that's another thing that you can be worried about, is like, maybe Eichel only plays 16 minutes because they play the fourth line 13 minutes because they're up 2-0 early and they just lock things down. Like, that's a genuine concern.
Yeah. Let's move on to the last game of the night that I have more interest in than I should, or maybe not. I'll get into it and I'll explain why. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.1 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.9 total. The first thing I did when I was going through this slate, making the run sheets and the totals and all that, I said I hate when Carolina's on the West Coast because no one plays them and they're always in a good spot. And tonight is no different. No Arvidsson still he's week to week for the Kings. So yeah, maybe the Pierre-Luc Dubois line is going to go out against Carolina 1, but they're not the defensive line that, the Deneau line was with Arvidsson there. So Carolina 1 is 17,000 flat. The Kings don't have a very good penalty kill. They're starting Phoenix Copley. I don't know, man. They're getting 2% ownership. This feels like they're fully correlated. This feels like a really good late night hammer spot that no one's talking about.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their West Coast trips last year. Went into St. Louis, scored 6. Went into Los Angeles, scored 4. Went into Arizona, scored 6. This is the spot that we were talking about earlier in the show. Carolina's top line, Michael Bunting's on the top power play unit, so they're perfectly correlated on the power play. They're only $17K, so you have a perfectly correlated top line at $17,000 coming in, 2% ownership, which is, it's lower than the Boston top line that we talked about earlier. It's lower than the Minnesota top line that we talked about earlier. It's lower than the Detroit top line, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is that Los Angeles is still using Drew Doughty in a shutdown role. And at this stage of his career, Drew Doughty just can't do it. He just can't. It sucks to say that, but he can't play heavy minutes against the opposing team's top line. Just look at what happened against Colorado. They skated circles around them. Even Anze Kopitar, he's starting to, kind of decline a little bit. And they did use him in a shutdown role against Nathan McKinnon, and they got ran over too. So it is the Carolina top line that I like here tonight. Seth Jarvis played over 21 minutes in that last game. And that's kind of the other thing here is Seth Jarvis had a really good rookie season, kind of a down year last year, but they're really high on him. Like there's a reason why he had a bad year last year and went right to the top line in preseason and stayed there ever since. They're really, really high on him. He was a high draft pick. I'm high on him as well. He's one of my favorite, players under the age of 23 or whatever in the league. And it's one of these things like if Jarvis hits his upside, he could be kind of like an Andrei Svechnikov. And in a month's time, this line is going to be like 19,500. You know what I mean? Like they're pricing Seth Jarvis as if he's the guy of last year. And if he's better than the guy of last year, this line's going to be a lot more expensive moving forward. So it's not a tough matchup at 5-on-5. It's not a tough matchup against Los Angeles' penalty kill. They're perfectly correlated on the power play, reasonable price, good leverage. Carolina top line is one of my favorite lines on this entire slate. Like they are one of the three lines that I'm heavily considering building around. So Carolina 1, Carolina 2, I think is also in play because they're going to get Fiala and Dubois. And that Carolina second line generated a lot together last year. 4.8 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, 2.8 expected goals. Probably not going to get a ton of power play time, but I think they're fine as well. But I do like the Carolina top line. If anything, on the Los Angeles side, it would be their top line. I think going into the Kings top line itself is the best matchup. But I'm going to be honest, I'd rather just find the $2,000 in my lineup and go play Carolina instead.
Yeah, I agree. They need Arvidsson back. They need Kaliev back. It'll start to help everyone. And let's talk about some defensemen here. A couple of expensive guys that I don't have too much interest in. I almost said Yossi. I would have got fired after I asked for a raise. Erik Karlsson on a back-to-back, 7,200. Don't have a ton of interest there. Makar at 7,700, I think that's a very fair price. I do like him. With Pietrangelo out, that makes Shea Theodore still a better option, even though he came out very slow to start this season. Adam Fox, 6,100. Evan Bouchard. Who else you liking?
I think, Makar and Bouchard definitely at the top. Fox, I think he's a guy that you don't necessarily need to play in your Rangers power play stacks, but he is a guy I honestly don't mind one-offing. Yes, Theodore, absolutely, with Pietrangelo out. Darnell Nurse is far too cheap on DK. I think he's like 46 or 4,800. He should be in the fives in this matchup. Also in the mid-price range, Seth Jones and Mike Matheson. I like both defensemen in that game. They're expecting goals in that game. So I do like both defensemen. On the cheaper side, Matt Roy and Dmitry Orlov in that late Kings-Carolina game. I think they're both in play. Philip Hronik as well, if he plays for Vancouver. I saw that there might be some issues with him. He was rotating with Carson Soucy at morning skate, so we'll have to check in on that. But if he plays, I don't mind him. Super cheap guys. David Jiricek, we mentioned him from Columbus as long as he goes in. Connor Clifton's also only 2,500 from Buffalo. He plays on the penalty kill, so you honestly don't need much more than a block bonus from him for value at 2,500. Radko Gudas is 2,600 from Anaheim as well. So there's a few cheap guys if you want to throw them in.
One other name I'll mention, Mario Ferraro. He might block 112 shots tonight.
Yeah, he might.
Goalies we were talking about before the show. There are a lot of cheapies on DraftKings that are viable here tonight. I'll let you talk about the cheap ones. In the spend-up options, I don't mind Igor at 8,200. Ilya Sorokin at 7,900. Even Freddie Anderson at 7,800. And then from 75 and below, there's a ton of options. Who are your favorite?
Yeah, the two I'll mention, I'll mention probably UC Saros, it feels like every single show until they actually price him appropriately. I wrote up John Gibson in the picks article, and the reason for that is just the shot volume faced, right? One thing I noted is that he still put up at least 18 DraftKings points in 20% of the games where he allowed at least 4 goals. You know what I mean? So he could get lit up tonight and still give a pretty good DK score just because of the shot volume expected. So I do like John Gibson. If he, somehow throws up a shutout or just 1 goal against, he's going to have a really, really good score just because of that shot volume again. So Gibson and Saros at the top of the list. Don't mind Phoenix Copley. Again, any goalie facing Carolina, especially at home and a cheap one. I don't mind them. I think if I'm going to spend up, the guy that I'm going to, Sorokin.
Yep. Agreed there. So before we get to the hat trick pick, make sure to smash that like button. There is over 115 of you here. If you are thinking about going premium, today is the last day again to take advantage of that special offer in the link in the description below. You get 10% off weekly and monthly packages. If you are on the fence, just grab that weekly package at a discount. You can give the subscription a test drive for a week, and if you like it, I don't see why you wouldn't. You can re-up in the monthly. You get projections, top stacks, ownership, Discord, the whole shebang. Cliffy's article are free to read. Our show is obviously free to listen to and watch. But yeah, premium is where it's at. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go with a guy that was in my picks article and I think is going under-owned here tonight. I'm going with Pavel Buchnevich.
I am going, you just talked about how Gibson could smash even in the loss. I think he is going to have a loss, but he might get that saves bonus. He may let in a few to Jonathan Marchessault.
Ooh, I like it. I like that.
So for Cliffy, I am Josh. We will be back on Monday. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week, I believe. Wednesday is a 2-gamer. So we will see you. We don't have shows on Sunday, obviously. Good luck if you're playing NFL tomorrow. I will be at the Jets-Eagles game crying. So good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you on Monday.
Good luck tonight, everyone. We'll see you on Monday.